briefly before we go to the formal proceedings. So, I mean, COP30 in Belem, it kind of marked a very global pivot from negotiations towards implementation. And for Pakistan, a country that is really highly vulnerable to climate change, with again rising adaptation needs and tight fiscal scales, the outcomes that we actually have really needs a lot of discussion, and also to kind of analyze what strategic opportunity openings as well as risks it kind of pose. And this is what we're going to discuss today, but keeping a focus on actionable steps we need to take going forward to ensure progress towards an inclusive climate action. And also what strategies or priorities should be adopted to make Pakistan's participation at COP31 perhaps even more impactful. So let me take you through our agenda for today. We'll initially be starting with a plenary session. We're very pleased to have with us Honorable Naveed Kamar Saab, a member of National Assembly and Chairman Standing Committee on Finance and Revenue. And we'll very shortly be joined by Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri, the Executive Director of SDPI, Dr. Shafqat Munir, Deputy Executive Director of SDPI. And following that high-level plenary, we will have two roundtable discussion. In fact, one roundtable discussion with a focus on two themes. One would be around the climate finance, and the second one would be around the just energy transition. Before setting any of the housekeeping rules, let me go towards a formal welcome of the event. For that, let me invite Dr. Shafqat Munir, the Deputy Executive Director at SDPI. And Dr. Shafqat, if I can request you, if you're comfortable, you can join us here at the podium. So thank you so much, Dr. Shafqat. Over to you.
Thank you, Ubaid. I would like to welcome Honorable Naveed Kamar Saab for gracing this occasion, and he was also at the COP, and he has been watching COP for many, many years. So we will hear from him, and I would like to welcome the colleagues from Civil Services Academy. I know you have another session after that. You have to go through briefly discussing the major outcomes. I would request later Naveed Kamar Saab, he will give you the overall picture, but I will give you some snapshots of what has happened at COP30. Basically, these COPs are negotiating forms. These are not charity organizations, and they are not just dialogues. They are negotiations. And you well understand that when there are negotiations, then there are bids with the interest of parties negotiating. So in that way, we cannot just calculate this COP was bad or good COP. Only it is the eye or angle with which we see the COP's outcome. For example, people in North or the northern countries, northern negotiator, they will look at COP with their own angle. But we, the southern people or the governments, we will see COP with our own eye. So that's why it's both mixed. Always after the negotiation, when COPs end, it is not that all the desires fulfilled by the South, global South, or all the desires fulfilled by of the North are fulfilled. So this is the scenario where talks are there. So at COP particularly, the good news is that there is a gain for adaptation funding. And bad news is that the text is not talking about fossil fuels, because ultimately fossil fuels is the problem that creating much of the issues for not only particularly for South, because we are bearing the brunt of climate change. Look at fog we are having it here because of all these emissions and pollutants in the air. Then we are suffering. There are many other sufferings kind of thing. So if there is a good news for adaptation, there would be funding would be increased, and bad is that fossil fuel debate is out. Until COP30, the debate was on, at least in the text, there was some language on fossil fuel phase out. Not exactly in the phase out word, but at least it was in the text. But now it is out of the text, and it has been given that all the countries, they can have their own targets, and they can have, but they say that it should be out of the UN ambit, which means the fossil fuel is now out of the debate until we make a hue and cry and get it again on the agenda at COP31 or upwards. So, a couple of things. What is that adaptation advantage? Now the funding has been tripled as a commitment that for adaptation commitment, the funding would be 3 times as committed previously. So, which mean that there would be more resources available for developing countries and for those who need the development. If you look at Pakistan's own adaptation needs, only from the transport sector, we need a huge amount in billions of dollars every year. If you want to add agriculture emission, then certainly that counts goes up. But at least there is a space that we can go for these important thing. Why it matters for Pakistan? Because until now the whole agenda is around mitigation. Mitigation, of course, we acknowledge that it stopped the fire. But what adaptation does, it provides a foolproof house or foolproof building, which means that before the fire, we need our own system fireproof. So that is the difference between mitigation and adaptation. And for Pakistan, for next COP and commitment, I think our focus should not be more on mitigation. Our NDC 3.0 largely commits that all the projects are under mitigation. But that would not be a solution for Pakistan's climate change agenda. That's why my understanding is that if we come up with the less mitigation project, more on adaptation, build our capacity so that we can access these funds in adaptation funds. Secondly, on the tropical forest, that's a good thing. Brazil, because they were host, they could have won for them the protection mechanism or ecosystem payment part of that process and negotiation. Though Pakistan is not a tropical forest country, but we have other bits on the basis of Brazil's success. We can access that what we call the ecosystem-based payments. For that, we have a case. We can build our case that we are protector of the third pole, which is of course our cryosphere, the glaciers. So we can build for glacier protection our case as Pakistan. Similar on the basis of Brazil, they have built the case of forests. If they have work for the lungs of the world, we can work for the veins where water comes up, glaciers melting, and if the trees are a stunning kind of a protection, we are holding the third pole, which is the glaciers in our north. So these are some of the bargaining chips where Pakistan have the opportunity. Similarly, on the loss and damage fund was set up at COP27 and operationalized at 28 in Dubai. Pakistan has done a lot of work. At that time, Madam Sherry Rahman was the minister, and she brought that on the agenda, and with the G77 countries, Pakistan could have built a strong case based on the 22 floods, and then we could have this fund established and operationalized. Now, if you look at these are some of the positive things. Now, if you look at some of the negative things, which I briefly mentioned when I said good news and bad news. So that is the fossil fuel thing. Now, we need energy security because, if we talk about the fossil fuel, that also include our coal and gas use. If Pakistan has our own reserves, Pakistan has the coal reserve, and we have a development right. And if we want to use our reserve, then there will be a mechanism or there could be penalties on Pakistan if we are using our coal and other things. So that's why fossil fuel is a double-edged sword. That could also be a damaging point. And then, of course, new collective quantitative goals and CQG. These are also kind of a mechanism under which if we go for funding or apply for funding, there could be some of the technical barriers on that. And they can, we fear, not only Pakistan, but the global South fears that they can be used against us. For example, CBAMs, European Union's have a border mechanism process. So these are the areas which can hit us badly. So that's why we have to be very careful on that. Similarly, the issue is that at the moment, if we are not accessing adaptation funds appropriately with our technical skill, then certainly it will cost us. It will cost our development. Otherwise, we have to cut our development fund and we have to do the adaptation things. So, and ultimately, we have to adapt. Either we adapt through the international funding, which is they announced that it is tripled now, and we can access it. But sorry. So then it will be a problematic thing. Otherwise, we have to compromise on our development. Now, again, this is up to us. If we want to have our development compromise or we want to build our skills as Pakistan to build our skill to access the adaptation funding globally available. So these are some of the the top line things which I just want to share with you. But you will find more from the experts here. Honorable Naveed Kamar Saab, Dr. Abid Saab is here. And then in the second session, there are technical people, those who can give you further information. So with that, I would thank him for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shafkat, for highlighting some of the developments that happened at COP30 and how it kind of links to the very debate around the climate change. So with this, we'll be moving towards our first session. And for that, let me invite Dr. Abid Qayyum Soleri, the Executive Director of SDPI and Chairman of the Board, NDRMF, for his scene-setting address.
Thank you, Ubaid. Honorable Naveed Kamar Saab, dear delegates from 48th Specialized Training Program of Civil Service Academy, distinguished civil society comrades, friends from media and civil society. It's a great omen to see the Civil Service Academy trainees visiting different think tanks and especially the specialized training program that particularly is focusing on climate change and environmental issues. And that would definitely bring this change in the mindset of aspiring civil servants. You know, the technical ministries at federal or provincial level, they were considered to be the most redundant ministries. And if you look at your seniors today, many of them, when they get posted to Ministry of Food Security, Ministry of Climate Change, Ministry of Health Regulation, etc., they feel that they are sort of being punished. But the world we are moving in, I think these are the specialized ministries which would gain more importance. Of course, administration, general administration is a very general job, but dealing with these specialized issues that would impact our lives and livelihood, and that would impact our future generations. I think this is something which is extraordinarily significant, and I appreciate the management of CSA as well as the NSPP, of which I am also happen to be a member of Board of Governors. We are trying to emphasize on importance of this particular subject. Now, coming back to today's topic, which is climate change. And when we talk of climate change, we are just coming back from Belem, where COP30 was held. As you know, that the parties to this agreement of UNFCCC, they meet every year. They look at some of the global challenges on climate change, and then they come up with their climate actions. Now, the challenge is quite clear when we were moving to COP30. Just 2 weeks before COP30, there was this report. If you haven't gone through it for your syndicate or your research, it is called this emission gap analysis report. And this emission gap analysis report by UNEP, it actually tells us that what is the level of emission today, and if you relate it with the Paris Agreement's commitment, where it was decided that we'll be trying to work towards keeping the planet's temperature, contain it to 1.5 to 2 degree centigrade from the pre-industrial level. We would not let it go beyond it. That's where we have to look at the emissions. So according to the latest emission gap analysis report, right now there is no way we can contain our emissions and not contain our emission, contain the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees centigrade. So in next few years, the planet's temperature would be higher than this 1.5 degrees centigrade. Now, what does it really mean when we talk of this containing the temperature to 1.5 degrees centigrade? Right now, I can't see signals on my phone, but if you go to your weather app, you will find on your weather app, looking at the temperature, it tells you a graph which shows how high or low is the today's temperature from the historic average. So you will find for any place you are that most of the time this temperature, in case of Pakistan, it is giving us the temperature from I think late 1960s, and it compares with the historic temperature with it. So here we are. I think I got my signals. So it tells me for Islamabad, this average temperature is plus 4 degree higher than what it used to be if we look at the average of last 40, 50 years. So 4 degree higher mean that if it's 18 degrees centigrade today in Islamabad on this 10th of December, you can well imagine that the planet's cumulative temperature, when it goes high or it goes low, how unpredictable it can be. And this unpredictability actually then affects our lives, our economies, our livelihoods. In case of countries like Pakistan, where food security is a major challenge, feeding 250 million people, this climate variation, that is a major challenge. One can argue that many of the manufacturing or production facilities can be paused, can be stopped if the conditions are not optimum. But agriculture, dealing with living organism, we cannot put a pause button to the mango crop or to the wheat crop or to cotton crop if the climatic conditions they are not suitable for it. So we have been observing year after year our crops getting affected by these climate variation. Now, it's not only about crop, it's also about livelihoods, livestock. Livestock, again, we are dealing with living organisms, and the impact of rise in temperature or drop in temperature or rain fall on our cattle and dairy animals, meat production animals, that is again very significant. We have been hit by 3 mega floods since 2009. Now, one of the silent victims in these floods are the cattle. When we provide relief material, of course, very rightly, the major focus is on human being, but it's a livestock struck in water, standing water, who will not find neither the clean drinking water nor the fodder to feed themselves. And they are also then, just like any other mammal, are prone and vulnerable to waterborne diseases. This livestock and agriculture is one victim, but then this circular impact of it will affect all other segments of our economy. It also affects the mood swings. One of the least studied dimension of climate change in Pakistan is its psychological impact. I don't know how many of you have observed that in summer, the road rashes, they increases because of this scorching heat. The drivers, they get more irritated, they get more grumpy, and they try to go into this revenge mood. Similarly, in most of our public service delivery offices, where the office premises, apart from the high-ups, are still not air-conditioned, you will find that public dealing, that becomes difficult, because those who are at the forefront of dealing with the citizens or customers, they will be more irritated, they would be more cranky, and that affects the whole society. Now, what needs to be done, and of course there will be technical sessions here. I think there are a couple of things we need to link them both with the global as well as with some of our domestic development. At a global level, as I said, that you must be following COP30 proceedings, you must be following emission gap analysis reports, you must be following global adaptation plan. Adaptation means accepting the reality and try to live with it. Mitigation means that the damage is already done, and now we are trying to control it through different interventions, whether it's technological intervention, whether it is switching the way we are dealing with our fossil fuels or production and manufacturing processes. So this global goal of adaptation is quite important. And then on top of everything, climate financing is extremely important. What happened, and again, you must be familiar with the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement. Until Kyoto Protocol, the emission reduction was considered to be the responsibility of rich countries, and rich countries were asked to reduce their emission. The developing countries, they were Annex 2 countries, they were sort of exempt from it. In Paris Agreement 10 years ago, a bargain deal was bargained, and both rich and developing countries, they were asked to reduce their emission, and in return of it, rich countries, they promised that they would be paying for the capacity as well as for the losses that the developing countries, they have been incurring. So that's where the debate of climate finance is. Now, 10 years down the road from Paris Agreement, we have seen that while developing countries, they are pressurized to reduce their emission, the pledges for climate finance, they are still not materialized. And that's where this whole issue of climate finance, it keeps on recurring in COP after COP, where developing countries, they demand for financial support, for technical support, for technological support, so that they can switch their production and their manufacturing and their processes to a greener milestone. Now, here again, the challenge that one faces is the definition of developing countries. So by definition, whole of Middle East and China and India and BRICS, Brazil and South Africa, all of them, they are developing countries. Now, developed nation, their argument is that some of the rich developing countries, they should contribute towards climate finance, while the least developed countries or low middle income countries, they should be actually getting benefit from it. And of course, this is something which is not acceptable to these rising economies among developing nation. Another challenge that field is the definition of vulnerable. Now, by definition, every place on this planet is vulnerable. In 2025, we saw what happened in Texas with the floods. We saw how Europe was hit badly with floods, how Wales and Scotland was hit with the floods, China, Pakistan, and most recently, till last week, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Singapore, Taiwan, Myanmar, they were hit by flood. So now every country is affected by floods, and that makes all of them vulnerable to climate change, and that makes the competition for climate finance even stringent and stricter. So even if there is climate finance, but if the definition is that vulnerable countries would be submitting their proposal to access climate finance, countries like Pakistan, they would still be lagging behind because A, we need capacity, B, we need technological skills and human resources. Now, concluding it and linking it with some of the domestic development, and Honorable Naveed Qamar Saab is here, who is also chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance in National Assembly. I think this debate on NFC formula, that's quite important. And we will see that as this NFC second meeting, which will take place in January somewhere, that happens, perhaps there will be a lot of discussions both on media as well as on off media on the formula of it, whether we should be still be giving 82% weightage to population, whether we need to introduce a new criterion for this horizontal distribution of national divisible pool. In 7th NFC ward, which I still say was a historic development, we shifted from solely head count this distribution formula, bringing in this inverse population density, which means cost of delivery, and this poverty and backwardness, and of course this war and terrorism and its impacts. I think, and revenue, 2.5% is for revenue generation, if I remember correctly. But 5% is for revenue generation. Naveed Qamar Saab is nodding his head in negation. I think he will be correcting us. But there was this revenue generation. I think it is about time that we need to introduce climate action in our formula, so that provinces, they are also asked to take care of their climate action, and the province with the most significant climate action should get some sort of incentive. That's my personal academic opinion. Of course, there will be a lot of discussion and bargains on it, but I do feel we need to incentivize the provinces for taking their climate action. Yes, climate finance is a challenge globally. We know climate finance is a challenge nationally as well. But we also know that we can't sit idle and leave everything to either the policy-led or this weather-led disasters to destroy our lives and livelihoods. So we need to move forward. And for it, while we are trying and striving, taking our best efforts at international forums to plead our case, we need to remain prepared domestically so that we can tackle this climate change issue. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abid, for highlighting the centrality of climate change for Pakistan's economic and social development, and definitely the recent developments and COP. Just in the interest of time, let me now invite our chief guest, Honorable Naveed Qamar Saab, to the podium for his keynote address. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dr. Abid Sulairi Sahab, our friend Shafkat, members of the class of whatever, 48 of the Civil Service Academy. Welcome to STPI. I think today, as we stand here to discuss what happened at COP or what may happen at future COPs, the future civil servants of Pakistan not only have to be sensitive to this issue, because increasingly you will hear more and more climate disaster, climate funding, and climate as a centerpiece of the debate in the country. And when you take over your positions in the districts or in the secretariats, it's a living issue. It's not an academic subject anymore where you would just be reading about it in the newspapers or reading about it in the textbooks. This is a subject that you would be dealing with on a day-to-day basis, especially those who are out in the field. So to know what it is, why it is, and where are we going, we need to be very clear on the issues. I think we've been talking about COPs. Just to give you a perspective, it's an annual gathering where countries, representatives of individual countries, as well as of civil society organizations, they get together. First, initially, yours was to highlight the issues, to bring the world focus there, but now to find the exact direction in which the world needs to go. And how can each one of us contribute to it? I think the landmark COP was Paris, where a benchmark was set globally, that this is our target, that we cannot afford to allow the temperature of this earth to go beyond at least 2% of what it was then. So, of course, it was a very big ask in that sense that each one of us had to contribute to that. Each country had to take measures domestically to be able to reach that goal. Are we anywhere near it? The simple answer is no. The simple answer, be it the COPs, which in my opinion, law of diminishing returns has set in. Each time we go there, and I've been following this for a number of years now, we go with a set of expectations, and whatever we achieve is well below those expectations that we set for ourselves. So what do we do wrong? And what is it that you, sitting in the positions where you are, can do? I think the one major issue that I've seen lacking, better homework and better coordination. Unfortunately, we don't even have coordination within the national representation, let alone a global coordination. I think Dr. Abid referred to lack of capacity. I think that's a very serious issue that we have. You cannot, I'll give you a live example. When we had the floods of 2022, the world was sympathetic. So there was a meeting in Paris. The French president organized it. The UN was there. The IMF was there. Everybody. And there were a lot of pledges. Pledges are a reasonably simple thing to do. You go there, you announce that we will give so much. The actual translation of that into money flowing into the country only happens when you are well prepared for it. While I don't remember now what that number was, but a huge number was pledged to Pakistan. What actually translated was only one project, which was the Sindh housing project, because the homework was already there. It was there, and it was a transparent project where the money would be dispersed to the recipient ultimately, but only after he had been first surveyed through satellite imagery as to how much work has he actually completed. The first tranche, the foundations, the plinth, then the roof, and so on. So while it was low-cost housing, it was done in a scientific manner. And because of that, not only did that initial pledge money flow in, but additional pledges were made, which were not part of the agreement, because people could see that the work has been done, and it has been done in a way which was promised. So that homework is so important. And at the end of the day, it will be your task to do that homework. The policymakers can only give certain broad outlines. At the end of the day, you have had to have the capacity to be able to translate that into actual projects, which then you can take to the world. When we talk of adaptation, when we talk of climate finance, all of these things are important only if you make them important, only if you're able. It is a selling job. And again, as was mentioned earlier, now climate is affecting every country in the world. This year we have seen Southeast Asia, or even South Asia, if you look at Sri Lanka. Some months ago it was China and the Northeast. And then before that, Europe. Of course, America is always in denial. Otherwise, they are some of the worst affected countries. So every year there will be some disaster or the other. There will be something that will trigger this whole global buzz on climate. But the benefits will only flow to those who are better prepared for it. So when we talk of climate finance, again, because of the competition, because the amount of funding available, though Shafkat talked about tripling from previous years, at the end of the day, the test of the pudding is in the eating. How much money was actually putting those pledges into actual projects? That needs to be seen. We can have lofty goals, we can have huge targets, but they're of no use. So moving forward, the homework is important. What do we want to achieve out of these COPs? There's another one happening next year in Turkey. So are we prepared? Have we done the homework? Has our ministry even done the homework? Unfortunately, no. I know we continue to highlight the one time in Sharm el-Sheikh where there was a better leadership to lead the team, and Pakistan was put on the map. But again, we have lost that. So we have to again claw back and work very hard to get to that position where we will benefit from it. But that is the name of the game. How do we benefit from it? Secondly, we can't do it alone. No country in the world can do it alone. And now that the battle lines have been drawn, it is north versus south. It is developed versus developing. Some people or some countries may be at a low level of development, others may be at the mid level of development. But the polluters have already benefited. The polluters have already enriched themselves by going into all kinds of industrialization, using coal, using fossil fuels, using anything and everything. They have suffered acid rain, they have suffered huge storms and so on, but doesn't matter, their pockets are full. Those of us sitting at the bottom rung of this whole debate, we cannot follow the same path. We have to be selective in our development strategies. We can't make the same mistakes, nor do we have the luxury of doing it because the world won't allow it now. So what is our development path? Not just the goals. How do we get from here to there? How do we manage our own climate situations? The Lahore and the most polluted cities in the world now somehow are congregating around in Pakistan. What are we doing to mitigate that? Because that affects your lungs, your overall health, and now today a new idea added to it, your mental health even. So these are issues that are here and now and today. So I saw a new study today which said that now the major culprit in this whole polluting situation is the transportation sector. In my opinion, that's probably the easiest one to tackle. Because the shifting to non-polluting transportation, be it electric vehicles or any other kind of thing, solar transport and so on, I think we must quickly move towards that. If we don't, then we'll keep on adding to our bill. We may be saving here by not spending, but we will not save in the overall budgetary situation if the population goes down drastically. It means your health budgets have to go up. But don't tackle it there. Do a prevention. Don't allow your future generations to be growing up with brown lungs. So it is time that we start not only talking about and tinkering at the edges, but going whole hog. I think everybody is now at least sensitive to this issue that we need to shift, especially in the transport sector. At least two of the provinces have taken steps. Both Sindh and Punjab are at least sensitive to the issue. So we hope that they move at a faster pace. Islamabad does not see itself as part of the problem because it's small, it's new, but eventually it will all catch up. So nobody is exempt from it, and even the other two provinces will ultimately have to deal with the situation. So yes, traffic control, pollution control on our roads is probably one of the primary goals that we within the country can have. This is such a vast subject that one can go on and on, but I need to leave this food for thought amongst the audience, which will be really the front line when you have to deal with these issues. So don't just think what is happening in the world, though it is important, and whatever is happening here and now. What are we doing to mitigate that? come up with the solutions. The problems are well known. Everybody knows the problem. And it's people sitting at the top don't have the monopoly of wisdom on these issues. It's the youngsters who have a whole life to live, not the ones who are in their 70s and 80s making problems, because they will not be there when this thing really starts hitting you. So be it our polls, be our product and route cycles, which are also going to be real and hitting us on our own productivity, but also our health and day-to-day living. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for addressing these really pertinent points. And I know that you have short time with us, so let me open the floor for just very few questions we can take as of now. I also know that the colleagues from the Civil Service Academy also have to leave. So perhaps if anyone has any quick questions they would like our Honorable Chairman Saab to address, particularly the representatives of Civil Service Academy. Please, and we'll take 3 questions at a time, and I believe we'll perhaps do one round. So over to you, sir. Ji, sir. Sure.
11, so perhaps I can only take one set of questions.
Yeah.
अगर हमने करना है तो we need to come up with an inclusive climate action. But on the other hand, when we talk about Pakistan, so we visited KP Secretariat like 2 days ago. So they were of the opinion that we didn't join COP. They were of the opinion this time that we haven't joined the COP this time. But when we see that KP is a province जहाँ पर सबसे ज़्यादा forest cover है, NFC debate की बात हो तो भी that is the main point which we are basically discussing at the national point. So अगर हम जब इंटरनेशनल लेवल के ऊपर फॉर एग्जांपल कॉप पे अपनी रिप्रेजेंटेशन लेकर जाते हैं तो वहाँ पर हमें एक डिसऑर्गेनाइज्ड या डिसकोऑर्डिनेटेड मैकेनिज्म मिलता है कि पंजाब फॉर एग्जांपल अपनी रिप्रेजेंटेशन लेकर जा रहा है, केपी अगर जा रहा है नहीं जा रहा बट वो अपनी रिप्रेजेंटेशन ला रहा है, then there is a federation sitting there who has no representation at all. So ऑन दी अदर हैंड दुनिया जो है वो इंडिजिनस कम्युनिटीज़ को रिकग्नाइज करने की तरफ जा रही है. सो जब तक हम अपना हाउस ऑर्डर में नहीं सेट करेंगे, हाउ डू यू सी that we can present our unified case in front of the international forums?
Ji, thank you. I think we can take one more quick question before we come to Honorable. Sir. Ji. I think perhaps one from that side.
दो क्वेश्चन ले लेना, इनसे भी ले लेना.
Sure, we can take 2.
Assalamualaikum, sir.
Okay.
Sir, my question is regarding Pakistan's policies and it's still towards mitigation rather adaptation. क्योंकि सर हम अगर देखते हैं तो पाकिस्तान जो कंट्रीब्यूशन है हमारी वो बहुत कम है उस लिहाज से टुवर्ड्स द ग्लोबल ओवरऑल क्लाइमेट चेंज जो हो रहा है, बट हमारा टिल्ट जो है वो ज़्यादा जो है अभी भी मिटिगेशन की तरफ, एडेप्टेशन की तरफ नहीं है, अपार्ट फ्रॉम फ्यू प्रोजेक्ट्स हमारा ओवरऑल. तो इस पे आई वांट योर कमेंट दिस.
जी, thank you. The last question, please.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. My name is Sanai Jaz. Sir, when we talk about this climate financing, or even when we look at the history of the COPs, every few years we see a new slogan rising, a new trend rising. For example, a couple of years ago, we had that whole thing going on, keeping the temperature below 1.5 degrees than the pre-industrial times. And now, since the few years, we are talking about climate finance. And I believe that nothing fruitful is coming out of this thing as well. So do you think this is just another slogan for a few years of the COPs and then eventually it will die down? And second part, that we are focusing too much on net zero, although we know that the net zero is unachievable in the current times that we are living in. In one way or another, we cannot reduce or mitigate the carbon footprints. Even in the clean energy, we cannot reduce or eradicate the carbon footprints in its entirety. Don't you think that we are focusing more on net zero and less on overconsumption that the world is moving forward? And even the COPs and all these things are also pushing ourselves somewhat towards overconsumption, which is actually leading towards the climate issues that we are facing over the period of time. So I would like to have your comments on
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Three totally different questions means I have to start focusing. First question, if you remind me, was I should have written this.
The Federation,
Federation
KP,
and
Okay.
KP's president.
I think that point you probably picked out of my own presentation, because I think that is a major problem that we have, that there is no coordination between, well, this year there was a lack of presence of the federal government altogether because of the timings of the legislative agendas and so on. But even in previous years, until the federal government does not take the lead on this and then brings all the provinces together, this is not happening. So when we devolved at the time of 18th Amendment, environment, which was a subject there, climate change was still created for international coordination, for this very purpose that you're talking about. And then after we created this ministry, the ministries should be functioning as the chief coordinating agency, not only the main coordinating agency within the country, but even globally. When we talk of a South-South dialogue in order to negotiate or achieve, we have to have a clear position of where we are going. So yes, I think there is a strong need for that, and the lead can only come from the Federal Ministry of Climate Change. Mitigation versus adaptation. I think my view on that is that we achieve whatever we can achieve. So it is not a either or equation, because things for us are real, yeah. We are sitting on river banks that swell up beyond anybody's control. Yeah, of course we should do, because we have less than, as you yourself said, less than 5% contribution to the carbon footprint. ठीक है ना, तो उसमें if we have some reserves of coal, for example, in Thar, which can help us in some of these growth issues, we cannot just completely suppress that. So this issue about net zero is also not, is only a theoretical debate. So, but there's so much benefit, but it has to be a global effort. Pakistan just killing everything, stopping everything, does not contribute anything to the overall problems that we have. The mountains that we have, the glaciers, the so-called third pole, who's going to stop their melting? Not Pakistan, not even this region. It has to be global. Unfortunately, what has happened, the disappointment that we see at the global level, coming to your, one thing happened, one country brought in a person who's a climate skeptic. Donald Trump decided he doesn't believe in climate change. That has changed the entire landscape, because they are the lead polluter, they are also the lead economy. Well, slowly they are losing that edge also, and China might take over. But nevertheless, so when you have a person sitting at the helm who gives a policy which does not recognize climate as an issue even, how do you move forward? How do you expect funding coming in? Now, just one person changing from, for example, Obama to Trump, and the entire agenda slows down if it doesn't come to a complete halt. So yes, it's disappointing. As I said, it's we see a lot of diminishing returns setting in, because we are no longer even getting the expectations that we had earlier. But that does not mean it's all doom and gloom. It means we have to do more work. It means we have to have better coordination. When it comes to climate issues, India and Pakistan and Bangladesh are all facing the same thing from the same sources. So while we may not see eye to eye on so many other planes, at least on climate, we have to have one single coordinated strategy around the world. And that is the only way we will be able to get any benefits out of these. Otherwise, it'll be seminars which we go attend and come home and nothing will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for responding to the questions. Now,
Wait, I apologize. I need to now move to Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pajan.
thank you.
I can take more questions if there are.
Yes, I think we still have almost 15 minutes till colleagues from Civil Service Academy would be here. So if you have any questions, we can have another round. Please do raise your hand and we'll collectively take them. If we can have one mic over here and one on that side, please. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, I would like to present a formal vote of thanks. Sir, with the increasing demand of climate finance and energy transition, sir, it has become ever more important to prepare ourselves for the emerging climate challenges. Sir, thank you for the insightful discussion and this sitting. We stand educated, sir. Sir, on the behalf of Director General Civil Services Academy, our additional director, Director Pass, sir, we would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude. Sir, now I would like to invite Sir Faisal Zahoor to give the shield as a token of appreciation, sir.
We can perhaps move to yes, this side. In the meanwhile, the tea is served. So those of you who want to take tea, please do grab a coffee and come back to the round table.
मुश्किल है ऑफिसर्स का, लेकिन मैं ट्राई करती हूँ. I would like to request कि अगर हम एक ग्रुप फोटो कर लें with the syndicate and SDPI team, हमें बाकी स्पीकर्स भी ज्वाइन कर लें. यहाँ पे पॉसिबिलिटी है कुछ लोग बैठ जाएं और कुछ, या हमें बाहर जाना पड़ेगा before they leave so we can have a group photo. फोटोग्राफर अगर आप मुझे गाइड करें. सॉरी. फोटोग्राफर किधर है सर? डॉक्टर साहब कह रहे हैं इधर बैठ जाएं और हम एक ग्रुप फोटो कर लें. कह रहे हैं सर इसके ग्रुप फोटो के लिए हमें बाहर मूव करना होगा. ओके सर. तो if we can proceed outside for a group photo please. Thank you.
जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम. If we can you proceed for group photo and then the people can then very quickly come back. Yeah, thank you.
To the group photo, we will resume the round tables. If we can proceed outside, please. Team STPI, अगर आप लोग facilitate कर दें. So we are starting at 11:30 a.m. sharp with our next session. And also, I would like to formally welcome Madam Aisha Humaira Chaudhary, Secretary, Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination, and also the woman or the powerhouse who was leading the delegation of Pakistan at COP30. Thank you so much for joining us, ma'am. We are just starting in a few minutes. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Once again, I welcome you all to this important post-COP briefing that has been organized by SDPI and by involving key stakeholders, Ministry of Climate Change, key negotiators that were involved, and key organizations from civil society who joined us for the important sessions at COP30, and also who joined us in helping shaping up the overall response that was delivered at COP30. But before, we request our chief guest for her remarks and also to share what was Pakistan's stance at COP30. Just a briefer or a refresher, I would like to share around what exactly are the challenges being faced by developing countries like ours, and also how COP30 was, whether it was a success story or whether it's also a sort of a challenge for developing countries. Just a brief presentation, and then we'll request the chief guest for her remarks. So I always like to showcase this image, how the number of heat days or the number of hot days globally are increasing. If you see the trends in Pakistan also, every successive year becomes the hottest. And if you see this heat map, by 2060, the temperature is expected to reach 60 degrees Celsius. And for a normal human being, 37 degrees Celsius is a benchmark temperature, and that you can tolerate. Beyond that temperature, your enzymes and physiology starts to degrade. So a number of heat days per year is increasing. No, because there's a lot of debate around El Nino, La Nina. Even on media, you keep on hearing how these factors affect your monsoon and transitional periods in South Asia. So just a basic scientific understanding of what exactly is El Nino, La Nina. It's a part of ENSO, which is an important climate driver, rather a weather pattern driver that drives the monsoon trends and drought periods in South Asia. So your monsoon patterns are predetermined sometimes by the oscillations in your Pacific Ocean that happen. So ENSO has two parts. El Nino is characterized by higher than average sea surface temperatures in the eastern tropical Pacific, and a weakening of the trade winds typically has a warming influence on your South Asia region. And this is something that was dominated in 2022 during spring season, when we had consecutive heat waves and there was a heat dome on South Asia. La Nina is characterized by below average sea surface temperature in the central and eastern tropical Pacific and a strengthening of the trade winds. It has the opposite effect. It brings more clouds during your monsoon season in South Asia. However, La Nina gets weakened as your weather gets, the temperature gets, it declines. and your winds gets colder. And because of the weak La Nina also, there are dry conditions in certain parts of the country, and it does not always bring clouds in your winter season. So La Nina and El Nino are something that determines the overall rainfall trends in drought season in your South Asia region. Now, climate change impact, of course, we are one of the most vulnerable country, and the vulnerability index always, it keeps on shifting whenever new reports are launched by German Watch and other indices. And then in terms of economic losses, I believe there are new trends that are being shaped by development partners based on different economic indicators, but generically speaking, latest reports indicate that 18 to 20% of Pakistan's GDP will be impacted by 2050 due to climate crisis. And then, however, there's one index that is not mentioned here. That was the latest one was Climate Perception Index report. Now, what is that index? That perception index indicates that how our countries ranked in terms of improving climate change action. And Pakistan ranks in the top 15th, which means we have improved our climate action over the past few years, and the ranking has improved. So this is some good news, but it does not mean that we are doing enough. It means that our index has improved compared to many other countries who go through similar crises, but their climate action is not up to the mark. So in that context, I think climate governance is shifting in Pakistan and is being prioritized by the government. These are some highlights over the years since 2022. How our livestock, crops, agriculture sector has remained in the news reports, how it affects us. Either we have two extremes. Either we have drought-like situation, heat waves, dry spell, no water, or we have too much water, unable to manage it, and there is a flooding situation. Crops, cash crops destroyed, livestock destroyed, non-economic losses are not even accounted for, and we have been suffering due to crises that we did not create. These are some summary of the key impacts extracted from key reports from World Bank, Asian Development Bank, United Nations reports. These are openly available. So over the years till 2022, there have been 152 extreme events. After 2022, the data is yet to be calculated on how many number of extreme events have been increased. 300% growth incidents increased in 1 year from 2021 to 2022. But interestingly, how much the percentage has increased now, that data is yet to be included, because there are many other factors, localized events that are also triggering glacier melt. And then high intensity heat wave persistence has increased to 41 days per year. And then we have hottest cities in the world every year. Jacobabad, Dadu in northern hemisphere, hottest ever temperatures gets recorded. Absolute water scarcity in many regions. Balochistan is suffering. Food insecurity is expected to rise. Sea level is rising. Climate-induced migration trends are also being monitored. And environmental degradation is, of course, now we are facing new kind of seasons. Smog, air pollution is becoming more prevalent. And climate has also indirect linkages with these kind of situation. Climate finance needs. Now, if I talk about Pakistan, expected, as per one of the World Bank's reports, $348 billion are needed by 2030 to overcome the adaptation needs. And Indus Delta degradation is costing us US $2 billion. And over the last 10 years, Pakistan has received only between $1.4 to $2 billion. This is the recorded or documented finance under different development financing schemes, GCF, that we have received, and by under different international development assistance. And then USD 6.5 to 8.5 per capita, far below estimated 348 billion. So the flows are not even peanuts, rather crumbs that we are getting from in terms of international financial assistance. Now, what were COP30 outcomes? Global Mushi Rao or Muti Rao collective action was their overall theme of this year. And because it was taking place 33 years after Rio conference in Brazil, so it had its own symbolic significance, because indigenous communities and Amazon, the lungs of the world, it's there. So that's why indigenous communities were dominating the overall agenda. global climate finance and adaptation support, forest protection, land use, indigenous rights, implementation of the Paris Agreement, different articles, and then there are so many sub-themes and so many technicalities, so many agendas that gets driven by different thematic groups discussions was also part of it. Now we know $1.3 trillion finance till 2035, although there has been again an agreement, not, but some consensus has been made that it will be increased and, tripling of the finance. But in COP29, the deadline was 2030. Now the deadline is 2035. You never know, it might become 2040 in next COP. So it depends, because this shows lack of agreement by your rich nations. And then COP30 political package reaffirmed support for the Paris Agreement on multilateral cooperation, solidarity, and accelerated implementation. But then there was more emphasis on adaptation, forestation, agriculture, indigenous communities. First time indigenous knowledge gets documented in your COP text. And non-binding fossil fuel phase-out roadmap. There is no roadmap exactly. There was just an announcement. So operational modalities remain undecisive. And then COP30 saw a boost for forest conservation. Of course, TRIPPF gets announced, and then RAISE initiative gets announced. So your tropical forest facility, and these are some of the first outcomes that we recognized there. And then, of course, as per the emission gap report, 1.5 is something that is now we cannot achieve. 2.7 degrees Celsius is something that is now considered a benchmark based on the NDC submitted by countries. Deferred agenda items that will go to COP31. Now, interestingly, from G77 plus China, there was a pushback in context of climate trade agreements that developed regions are coming up, such as CBAM. They don't see it as equitable development. And then there was open coalition on carbon markets. That was, again, one of the first outcomes we saw at COP30 because of G77 plus China. And then there was many other pledges that were made. For instance, this black carbon. It's a super pollutant, a short-lived pollutant. The roadmap to mitigate black carbon was first time, it was discussed, and it has become part of it, that countries will work out on mitigating this black carbon. What exactly is black carbon? It becomes part of your smog, which is released from crop residue, burning, vehicular emission, industrial emissions, and even by burning of biomass. And black carbon deposition in your glaciers is also one of the key factors that is, leading towards receding of glaciers. So it's important for countries like ours. Global stocktake ambition and mitigation ambition increases, and climate finance burden sharing and grant-based finance for developing countries. Again, it is deferred. Why? Because your developed countries, if I talk about Paris Agreement, Article 9, on adaptation, they came up with so many indicators that they set up for the developing countries in order to access the finance. But again, I would request Madam Aisha to highlight that as well. This shows climate injustice towards countries who do not have capacities even to overcome the challenges and to fulfill all those indicators. But then there was a consensus, not exactly consensus, decided by COP30 presidency that it is not going to be 150 indicators or set of 100 plus indicators, rather less than those indicators that will be set up for climate finance accessibility. Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite Madam Aisha Humaira from the Secretary, Ministry of Climate Change, for her remarks. And first of all, I'm grateful to you, Madam, for leading the delegation and for leading the negotiations this time, for raising the voice of Pakistan, and for not only raising the voice for Pakistan but many other developing countries as well. Being a woman globally, it's always a challenge to make yourself heard, but I think you did it wonderfully, and we are really grateful that under your leadership we projected our cases not just at national level but even subnational level. So I would request all of you to give her a round of applause for her leadership, please. Over to you, ma'am. If you can join us at the podium so that people can see you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Zainab, for introducing me and SDPI for organizing this event. And I'm really grateful to Abid Saab, the kind of support and technical knowledge this organization brings to the ministry and to all the stakeholders. I think they are doing a wonderful job in ensuring that sustainability has adequate voice in all the policy making forums. So I think contribution of SDPI needs to be applauded as well. And I would really like to appreciate the work, especially that Zainab is doing with the ministry. She has been instrumental in doing some of the research and policy work. And I think the constant interaction and collaboration that we have with the experts of SDPI is really valuable for the ministry. For the COP, I would like to highlight certain things that if we look at overall outcomes, I would say this COP was a success for Global South over Global North, because the voice of developing countries was very strong. And in terms of logistics, maybe Brazil may not have done the best. There were challenges because the location was such, it was not a very big city, accommodation challenges and all those things were there. But in terms of negotiations, I think Brazil did a good job. They made sure that all parties are engaged, various views are heard, and till the last moment, they ensured engagement. So there was a night when, all stakeholders were engaged, presidency was having consultations. Although Brazil started having this 10-year policy dialogue and Mucharo concept a long time ago before the COP. So I think in terms of dealing with the content and substance, Brazil started very early, and it was a very good move that with several online sessions, with several letters from the presidency, they started preparing the membership about that Mucharo, concept of developing consensus. Because in COP, we see extreme divides. I mean, the divides have to be there because there is no equity and justice is required. But within that division, dialogue has to happen. So any COP which helps to create that dialogue, I think, is successful. So in that terms, I think COP30 was a great success, that it helped in generating that dialogue between Global South and Global North. And Global North was very defensive because US was not there. And usually in the COP, the real pushback comes from the US. So since the number was few from the Global North, so they were under pressure. But two issues which were raised by the developing countries in the intersessional in Germany, work on 9.1 and unilateral trade measures. I think these were two completely no-go areas. And in Bonn, it looked that there will be no progress on these two. And these two issues will be show blockers, or, nothing would be possible. But I think by creating an environment of consensus and dialogue, we were successfully able to get some outcomes. The language may not be the best one, but since there was so much focus on implementation, and from the policy cycles, the whole focus of the COP was to move towards implementation. So developing countries very successfully made their case that means of implementation are lacking. And that was the perspective that Pakistan also highlighted, that when we talk about level of ambition, the level of ambition in the NDCs is not lacking. The level of ambition is lacking in the means of implementation. So that was the narrative we made from Pakistan delegation. And the objective was to ensure that adaptation is at the forefront. The case that we made for Pakistan there was that we should not consider that development assistance and adaptation assistance is the same thing. If two floods wash away 10% of our GDP and we have to build again, then it cannot, the same money cannot be repurposed and reallocated and can be called reconstruction and GDP growth and adaptation. We have to have additional climate finance. And the number one issue with the resources is that we don't really have a clear definition of climate finance. So what happens is that all the MDBs, whatever they are doing, they start classifying it as climate and environment, and it's old wine in new bottle. So that is the fundamental issue with climate finance. It is very important that we keep on asking for additional grant-based climate finance for countries like Pakistan, because we have huge need on the development side. We still have to grow our industry. We still have to ensure our infrastructure is there, our education, health, all these facilities need to be developed. There could be synergy between development and adaptation, but they are not the same thing. So this, I think, is extremely important, and I would really like our researchers and various organizations engaged in lobbying and networking also start writing about these things, that how these two are very different, and countries like Pakistan, who are not the main emitters, need major resources for both needs, adaptation as well as development. So global goal on adaptation was a very important outcome for us. Similarly, NAP was a very important outcome for us. Tripling of adaptation finance was very important. And the negotiations were very interesting, that when we were having a plenary and this demand was repeatedly raised by the developing countries, suddenly some of the developed countries started making statements that, developing countries do not adhere to data and science and all that. So there were a few statements which highlighted that how in the last 200 years, what the data and science is showing, that who now has the responsibility to ensure that resources are made available. And Pakistan at every forum highlighted that we really want the data and science to be at the forefront. Unless and until we adopt these two, we cannot really find solutions. So these are the undercurrents which were happening throughout the negotiations. And NDCs were very important. Obviously, it was considered an implementation COP. So countries with their NDCs already submitted before COP, I think were in an advantageous position in terms of their bilaterals, because it was Pakistan submitted its NDC 3.0 in September, and it was really appreciated by the head of UNFCCC, as well as in all the bilaterals that we had. So if we lay out our needs and demands and our targets clearly, I think that is the best strategy for engaging with COP and climate related challenges. And then we also organized few, on the NAP, I would like to say that although we agreed with the outcome, the negotiated text which came out, but in the plenary, Pakistan made it very clear that we are only agreeing with this outcome to show solidarity. But in the intersessional, there should be discussion on means of implementation, because the kind of text which is developing there is bringing all the responsibility for the implementation of NAP on domestic resources, which will not be acceptable. So there has to be an inclusion of appropriate text on means of implementation in NAP. And this is very important. And I would really like all of you to think about it and write about it before the intersessional. So there is more pressure on the negotiators that this is a demand from the developing countries. Another important aspect of the negotiation are the side events, because that is an opportunity to showcase your country and you can indicate your success. You can identify again your goals if you want, investments in certain areas, if you want collaboration with GCF, Jeff. So we had several sideline events, and Chief Minister of Punjab was leading the delegation from Punjab. They made very forceful and impactful presentation there. Her presence itself was very impactful. She had several bilateral meetings with important players and Triple GI as well. New Zealand former Prime Minister was there. So CM Punjab with the former New Zealand Prime Minister inaugurated the Pakistan Pavilion. And she explained that how biggest province of Pakistan has transformed despite having so many challenges, despite facing 2025 flood, the kind of work that they have done in increasing resilience and waste management, clean air. So I think that was a very good projection of Pakistan, not just being, asking all the time for money whenever there is a disaster, or seen as someone who is completely helpless. There was a picture of Pakistan which is facing these challenges very bravely and coming up with solutions. And then another very important contribution was from V20. They have developed a Pakistan Prosperity Plan in collaboration with Ministry of Finance. And I would like him to explain about it. We really want to have a proper launch of that prosperity plan, actually. And hopefully when the minister is in town, we will request the finance minister and the climate change minister to launch that plan. Because that again is a very good message to other partners, that it's not that, flood is not the only thing in Pakistan. There are a lot of investment opportunities as well. Because we have two clusters of work. One is mitigation, where we do see IRR, and we can encourage private sector to come forward. And the other cluster is of resilience and, preparedness, early warning, where we really need to invest public resources, and we want 100% grant to ensure that our adaptation needs are fulfilled. So to take both these clusters forward, we do have our climate change policy, our national adaptation plan, and the documents in place. But I think it's very important that we clearly identify those business opportunities. A day before yesterday, there was a conference by Balochistan where they highlighted the challenges that the province is facing. I think these type of provincial initiatives are extremely important. Just as Punjab came up with what they are doing, I think we need to showcase. Each province has to come up with the challenges that they are facing, their adaptation needs, and how NAP and climate change policy, clean air policy is translating into provincial action plans and going down to the district level action plans. So I think this is the transformation which we really need to do after the COP. And I hope we'll all work together in this journey. My colleague is also here. He was working on the technology work happening, all the negotiations related to technology happening in COP. This is also very important area for Pakistan. So we took a lead on that. In our plenary also, we identified that we are not happy with the progress made, although certain things were positive, but the way technology should be at the forefront in COP, it is still not there. But in our domestic policies, we are trying to ensure that startups and young entrepreneurs with innovative solutions get an enabling environment for scaling up their products and services. So for that, our minister has also taken up this issue with the UK minister, that we really want to create a fund here to encourage startups. And we are working very closely with the research institutions, with the various incubators and accelerators to really ensure that sustainability related solutions come forward. And we have innovative solutions in our country, because Pakistan cannot keep on importing solutions. We have to scale these solutions and we have to create our own solutions. So this is in line with our NDC 3.0. This is in line with the Pakistan national priority set by UDAN Pakistan plan. And we hope that we will be working closely with all of you to ensure implementation of all of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for rightly pointed out one of the key facts, and that is that we need indigenization in Pakistan. And for indigenization, I think the role of startups and SMEs is extremely crucial. And we need to, and I think the initiative of the Green University by Ministry of Climate Change will be opening doors for the solutions at-home grown solutions that we really require instead of imported solutions. So I think that's a very important step, and we are all here to support the ministry. With this, as we have members from civil society organizations, technical negotiators who joined us at COP, and also National Disaster Risk Management Fund, we have some guiding questions, because now I think this is the right time we decide for how we will be going forward from here towards the technical sessions and shaping up Pakistan's response for the international forums. COP is one of them. We have other forums as well, and how Pakistan has shifted its narrative from, asking or looking at humanitarian assistance. We look at reparations, which are our right. And I think that is the kind of narrative we will be taking forward. But with this, I'll start. Rather, I would like to hand over to Ubaidur Rahman to take up the floor and request the colleagues who have joined us here to shed some light on these questions on how do they see COP and how do they look forward to Pakistan's plan of action that we can work on in the coming quarters. Over to you, Beth.
Yes, thank you so much, Zainab. So just taking lead from what Zainab has mentioned, I think we'll kind of divide the discussion under the two themes. One is the climate finance, and the second one would be around the just energy transition, where we'll be discussing some of the developments that happen. So I think, again, taking the approach that Zainab also kind of mentioned, that initially listening from the national development partners, we have the civil society we have. And firstly, perhaps moving the discussion towards climate finance, I think Madam Aisha has already mentioned the very enabling role that was played by CVF V20 around Pakistan's climate prosperity plan. So let me come directly to Hamza Haroon Saab. Hamza Saab, first of all, thank you so much for the wonderful efforts. But from there, you have already shed a lot of light on what the CPP would look like at the COP side events. So with this, I'll be kind of requesting you to also kind of let us know what the roadmap around the climate finance looks for you from this point forward. So Hamza sir, over to you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you so much, Ubaid, for that introduction. And I want to also quickly congratulate Madam Secretary for a wonderful COP. I truly believe that her valiant efforts really paid off. And you judge some of this leadership also when you start hearing it from other people. And I can tell you that I was hearing it from other people at the COP of the great work the Pakistan negotiation team was doing at COP. So congratulations once again, madam, and always a pleasure to partner with you. We've been doing this for almost 2 years now. So it's come to a point where we've all become like family, so which is good. I would like to, many of the things Madam Secretary has already mentioned. I don't want to repeat those things. I think you guys have already heard from the presentation as well, like what was achieved, what needs work on. I think for me, let me highlight a few things that I saw from the CVF-V20 perspective, not just from the Pakistan angle, but what other countries were facing, what LDC was facing, what OASIS was talking about. Well, let me start off with the pavilion. So one of the things we did was we started working with Pakistan Pavilion, Bangladesh Pavilion, DRC, and all those other places to highlight some of the successes that are happening within the country. Of course, Pakistan did a wonderful job, especially with the Punjab coming in and highlighting some of their initiatives. But what we also did at the Pakistan Pavilion was highlight the climate prosperity plans of not just Pakistan, but other countries as well. Pakistan was unfortunately, it's going to be approved and launched. So then we'll start, telling it to the world. But we had Bhutan come in, we had Bangladesh come in, we had Sri Lanka, Ghana. They presented their plans and they told the world what is exactly needed to move them from vulnerability towards prosperity, which is great. Then we had a country platform event at the pavilion where we had people from Bangladesh, we had Dr. Khalid Wali from STPI, and we had the strategy director of GCF come in and explain to everyone what is happening at the world within GCF and what is the agenda with the country platform approach. Why are they doing it? And I'm going to speak about that as well. And then we had the youth event where, I must say the pavilion was packed. And not only the youth that was coming from CVF-V20, but the youth that was actually just roaming around in the pavilions would come and join in that event. So that was something really good that happened. The second thing I want to mention is, as Secretary mentioned, one of the biggest contention we had with COP30 was you're giving us recycled money. There's no new money. Where's the incrementality to it? And that is one of the concerns I had, and I believe V20 had as well, in terms of tripling the adaptation finance, but there's no clarity where that money is coming from. There's no binding nature to it. It's all voluntary. Like, these are the questions that we need to start asking as we get into negotiations, coming forward. The pledges now need to become actions. That's the biggest thing that needs to happen. And we're working on with a few countries as well in making sure that those things take place. Now, what do we do from now on? We're sitting in December. This is going to happen again in November. How do we plan our way forward is going to be of critical importance. I propose three verticals in which we can do it. First is we need to start preparing from now. One of the things that, Madam Secretary, I would also come and speak to you about is how do we target the calendar year that's coming? There are a bunch of important meetings that are going to happen in April, that are going to happen in May, that are going to happen in September. How do we engage in those meetings to unify allies to talk about the issues that we're talking about today? That is going to be of essence. The other thing is, how do you create, and this is something we're working on within the V20 and we worked on with a few countries, is how do you create a really solid negotiation team? Because the negotiations actually start from the second week after COP. COP30 office is already open. By the way, we met the COP30 presidency back in March and April twice. Tulio Andrade, who's the strategy advisor to the president, I met him 5, 6 times the entire course of the year. That is how you start to negotiate. You feed in different things. We fed in text. We commented on text. We spoke at the Circle of Finance Ministers. That is something that we're going to work on a bit more this year with our countries, so that we're not starting 4 weeks or 5 weeks before the COP. We're starting 9 months back. And, people remember you. Just, some things that I saw when you're at the negotiating rooms, and I'm sure, madam, you saw this as well. All of these people are friends. All of those people who are, representing different interests are actually friends. And they have breakfast together, they have dinner together, they're hanging out together. And oh, by the way, they're also negotiating together. You have to plan it that way. You have to put in people who become friends with these people so that you can get your agenda forward and they start listening to you. And that's something I saw in the closed groups as well that was happening. The second pillar that I would recommend is do it yourself. We need to start thinking of how do we do it ourselves, DIY. We have now the FRRD announcement, and I'm very happy to hear that the work has already started on getting those funds, which is great, and we're happy to help as well. But there's something beyond that as well, which is the Climate Prosperity Plan, right? Which is the country platform, which the secretary announced at the COP30 as well, which was a very good move on her end. So now you have a report which is telling you the strategy, and you are also creating a delivery unit to deliver on those initiatives. So that is something that we need to start working on. And by the way, once the report is launched, we'll definitely be inviting all our friends here as well. It's going to happen in a couple of weeks now, inshallah. But the report, what it does is it gives you projects from every province in Pakistan that have business viability, that shows the investor the return on investment, that gives them a clear pathway on who to talk to, what is the phase 1, what is the phase 2, what is the phase 3, what is the capital stack, all these things. That's the level of depth that we've went down into for those reports. And then the last point is leading from the CPP to the country platform, focus on investments. Investments. That is the name of the game. Like, we're not a think tank. I'll be very honest. V20 is not a think tank. We are action-oriented fellows who are coming into all our countries, member countries, and saying, look, we've had a lot of disappointment in the last 30 years, some progress, some disappointment. But if we want to do it ourselves, if we want to see the impact on ground ourselves, we need to show the world that, look, you don't need to invest in your own countries now. You can invest in Pakistan. You can invest in Bangladesh. You can invest in Bhutan. You can get more returns and be happy and get the funds out whenever you need to. That's the kind of approach that would be critical if we need to move forward.
If you could just kind of...
Sorry, my apologies. I get too passionate. So that is the kind of approach that we need to take moving forward. And I look forward to working with all of you and look forward to working with the Ministry of Climate. Once again, congratulations to STPI for hosting this event, and congratulations to the Ministry of Climate for doing a spectacular job at the COP30 negotiations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hamza Saab, and thank you for highlighting these 3 pillars approach. Let me come to very quickly to Basit from Renewables first on his approach around the climate finance, and then I'll come to Dr. Fahad as well. So Basit, if you want to add anything around this point on country platforms and the climate finance work that you have been doing.
Yeah, it's difficult to speak after Hamza, by the way, because he's coming up with all the solutions and then you don't want to go back to the problems. But I will anyhow, because I think I'll start off from last year. You had the similar session, Abed, after the COP. And perhaps at that time also, I was the only one pessimist in that room. So I'll take that hat again right now, because I see a lot of positivity, which is good, coming in from Pakistan side, which is good, and appreciate the work that the ministry has done. But in the global picture, why we are here, why Zainab was showing the vulnerability, what that means for us, I think that's critical. Last year, I was talking about 1.5 degrees Celsius probably being pushed out of the text, if you remember. And I think just last week we had an Asia Energy Summit. We were, talking to some of the people who were part of the negotiations and talking about that it is actually being considered whether 1.5 degrees Celsius should be part of the text or not. So we are heading towards 2 degrees Celsius being part of the text. Now, what does that mean for us? When we are talking about the heat waves that Zainab was showing the graph from the AR6 report, the heat wave frequency increased 50 times when you go from 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius. 50 times. That means for us, for people, living in the Sindh, for the Balochistan, it's a survival game for us. So when we are talking about financing, yes, it's critical. Yes, Global North has to set up, but since we are here in a much more of a domestic setting, there's also a lot of expectations and a lot of ambitions that we need to drive ourselves up, right? We have heard 2 or 3 arguments in this setting today regarding our emissions are not enough, right, in the global settings. Yes, that's an argument. I would put it in front of the Global North, but I would not put it in front of our domestic audience, because when you go out there, when you talk to the people that, yes, we want JP mechanisms, that we want finance, you can't be having mining at the same time, right? You have to take a fundamental stance that you are the one who is fighting for it, and you are the one who is suffering the vulnerability. So you have to take that stance and, clean up your home as well. So I think while there's a lot that needs to happen from the Global North, just a perspective for us that domestically, are we doing enough, right? So we do have some successes at the same time. Are we actually focused on making those successes a successes? Now, one of the success, I think that's where we have been part of, in the COP. And I think that's regarding Pakistan, where, it has been highlighted at a different platform at a global level, is regarding the solar rush, what we see. We have seen collectively almost importing more solar PV than our overall installed capacity onto the grid. I know I'm saying it probably almost a 20th or 30th time, but it's necessary to listen to know what it means for the world as well. So when we have deployed about 30 gigawatt of solar, so 46 is our total installed capacity on the grid, and much of it is coming online as we go around. And all of this is citizen-led, it is bottom-up, and it's market-driven. And these 3 things, when we talk about this kind of transformation happening at a clean energy landscape, that's like an ideal case scenario for any country out there, for the Global North. They want these distributed solutions being owned by consumers. You don't need multi-billion-dollar investment coming in from development banks, guarantees, or any kind of other instrument. It's just people putting their money and getting the solar on the rooftop. And that's the story that we sold at the COP. We have been talking about in Pakistan Pavilion, where we showed a lot of documentary in terms of what it means for the layman person. We talked about in Global Solar Council, Global Renewable Alliance, which are globally associations of more than 150 countries, talking about, okay, what is happening in Pakistan, how they have unlocked this great initiative, this transformational initiative, and is there a learning lesson that other countries can get? So for us, that's what's one of the primary agenda for being there at COP, to make sure that this story is not a Pakistan story anymore. It becomes a global story, so that we can find a success in it. But at the same time, I think there's also a lot of responsibility coming on us. When we're talking about the solar rush story that is being talked in Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, World Economic Forums, Global Solar Council, Renewable Alliance, everyone. I had ex-minister from Australia coming in and asking me, what is happening in Pakistan's solar rush? And that was saying
Sure,
something.
just
Quickly, now coming, what needs to happen to take this ahead is this particular rush we are seeing, we have to make sure that it becomes a success. Right? That means the things that we're talking about, taxes, the things that we are talking about, changing the regulations, if they end up failing or stopping this whole solar rush, solar boom, or whatever we want to call it, it doesn't become a failure story in Pakistan, it becomes a failure story global wide. And we have seen that happening with Spain, And we don't want that happen. And that's the agenda, to your last question, that we need to take to the COP31, that we spearhead this initiative by a lot of pledges around distributed solar into the COP31. I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Basil. And that's why we actually wanted to listen from you to also to kind of shed light on the other side of the coin while we're discussing. So just one last before we come to our government counterparts, let me come to Dr. Fahad Saeed for his interventions around the points on climate finance and what we have been discussing at the COP.
Thank you very much, Ubaid, and would like to thank SDPI as well for inviting me here. So it's a very good discussion which is ongoing at the moment, and I will try to touch upon a bit of politics. So a number have been floated by my previous two colleagues and also by Madam Secretary about that solar rush, the solar boom which Pakistan has witnessed recently. So the question for me would be that have we used it as a leverage to access more finance? So it is very heartening to know from our CVF colleague that we are now focusing on the adaptation led projects. Because when you talk about finance and the whole of the politics of the UNFCCC, I mean, we really have to understand the position of the countries because, yes, we certainly have groups, but every country is there for itself. For example, within the LMDCs, we have Saudi Arabia, whose 90% exports are based on fossil fuel. We have India, whose like 70 to 75% of energy system is based on fossil. We have China, although it is transitioning very quickly, but still 60% of its energy system depends on the fossil fuels. Pakistan also sit in LMDCs, That's why I feel that we should have our own position within the LMDCs, and we have to show ourselves. And now, after the solar boom, I mean, somebody can correct me, but I was reading some figures that the contribution of fossil in our energy system or the power system is now less than 40%. So that's where I feel that we need to distinct ourselves, because the position of the countries is very clear. You have these big emerging economies who are dependent on fossil fuels. They do not push for ambitious action when it comes to mitigation. Then we have EU. I mean, as Madam Secretary has very rightly pointed out that US was not there. There are changing dynamics at the global level as well. The world is becoming multipolar. China is like trying to occupy the gap which is left by US. EU is also on the back foot. So, but we have to, focus that what is it which is beneficial for Pakistan in the whole spectrum, in the whole ecosystem. So it is very important for a country like Pakistan that we present our successes, whether those are bottom up, whether those are, not top down, but still we have to present it as our success stories, and to come up with more adaptation-led projects where there is a handsome returns on adaptation. Let me also put forward some numbers. So Dr. Zainab has shown something on the screen, 1 to 2 billion. She mentioned, probably I'm forgetting. And as Madam Secretary has mentioned, that there is no definition of climate finance. But if I quote OECD data, which is the data came from the developed countries, then Pakistan has received from the developed countries around 12 to 13 billion US dollars from 2010 to 2022. The number, I mean, you can have a fair idea that, I mean, this number is not like fulfills the requirement of the country. Like the 2022 flood incurred the damages of around 30 billion. So 12 billion is not enough. I mean, it speaks for itself. But 50% of it, if it is on mitigation, and 50% on adaptation almost. And out of that, almost 85% are loans, which we have to pay back. Only 15% are the grants. So it speaks for itself that if we are looking for climate finance, it is likely to come as a loan. I mean, we can keep on beating the drum that we need the grants, the support, but it's very hard to come since we are talking internally. I mean, we can be candid on that respect. So it is very important for a country like Pakistan to come up with the projects, adaptation-led project, which also gives handsome returns to the investor. So it is all about the investment rather than getting the grants. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Fahad. All points very well noted. So let me now take again the discussion back to the front. And for that, let me come to Bilal Anwar Saab, the CEO of National Disaster Risk Management Fund. Sir, also, if you would like to respond to any of the points and your overall reflections on the key guiding questions that we have here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. And once again, thanks to SDPI for providing this forum and also to acknowledge the remarkable work undertaken at the COP by the Ministry of Climate Change. Just picking up the thread from where Hamza kind of very powerfully asserted, the work, whatever we want to do or the action we want to undertake, the work has to start from now onwards. And sometimes actually I feel that the climate action and the climate commitments are like New Year's resolutions, upbeat, super ambitious, 31st of December, 15th of January, everything is forgotten, I think we are mature enough, and we should be actually learning from this kind of attitude and really kind of the commitment for action which has been generated in COP30. I think we just have to move forward with it with the same rigor. Now, just a couple of points. Predominantly on the finance, as well as I was a little kind of sad to see that the reforms of the UNFCCC negotiation structure, the agenda was deferred once again, and which of course is very much needed for very much structural and political reasons, because with a broken system, you cannot really get the perfect outcomes. Being one of the veterans of the UNFCCC process, I know that how broken and kaput the system is. So, and I think that reform agenda should be taken, and I think the countries like Pakistan should also be actually very much pushing towards it as well. Okay. I mean, your 3-4 questions which you have just put up on there, I think 1.3 trillion is just not available. It's a number on the wall, and just like the 100 billion never got materialized either. I think we need to recognize that, and I think what it comes down to is the international climate finance is incredibly competitive. What we need to do that is not only, yes, the powerful narratives are very much needed. They basically set the goal, they set this broader context, but then they do not really bring the money into the country. What brings the money into the country is when the commitments and the actions are translated into what is very famously or fashionably is called the bankable projects. And I think that's where many countries like Pakistan, we are really lagging behind, because we have not been able to come up or kind of plug the capacities, the lack of the capacities, which can actually turn into a number of initiatives, a number of opportunities which are out there into the bankable projects. Now, I think there was a lot of discussion, very good discussion. Bassett brought this up, this PV rush, which had, sometimes is being called the kind of a silent revolution, which has taken place in the country, which is great story. I mean, I must acknowledge that, although this story is being tarnished, with the kind of a new developments which are being happening right now. But anyway, what is done, it's done. But that's a great mitigation story. But there are ways to build further this story. We haven't really looked at it from the carbon financing perspective at all. So that bus we have completely missed because of the Article 6.2 or 6.4 rules and regulation, the way they're really laid out. None of us actually, the great minds, we all are here. And none of us actually thought that, okay, while this is being done, the data is already there. And that might have been the easiest target actually turn into some kind of what we call the carbon assets and the new developments which are happening globally in the carbon assets as well. With the magnitude of the gigawatts which have been put up on the rooftops, I think we could have taken those carbon assets into the next stage and the next phase as well. But anyways, I think there are a number of other opportunities which are coming up as well. So I think that one kind of activity which has been kind of broadly not been really looked more deeply into it. I think this is something which we need to do as well. Moving on with the intensity, frequency of climate change impacts, the disasters which are increasing. There is absolutely no neither the low nor the hanging, not the fruit. Anything which is low hanging is not a fruit anyway, by the way. So I think we need to change that narrative. We need to really look from a very, very different perspective. When we're talking about the bankability of the projects, I think that bankability has to be established in an extremely scientific and quantified manner. And that's the only way we can actually motivate the global investors, what Hamza have very rightfully and justifiably have put up. I think moving ahead, implementation, I think that's the way to go. I think we have to look into that. There are plenty of opportunities in Pakistan. When we were actually doing, Madam, the NDC 1, and that was in 2016. And there are two people right now in this row who have been very much instrumental in putting together the NDC 1. Arif Gahir is the first one. I'll let you guess the second one. Now, we did the margin abatement costs. We actually quantified the marginal abatement cost curve for every single sector in Pakistan. And then after that, we actually started going around the world as well as within the country and starting saying that Pakistan is a carbon heaven because the marginal abatement cost in Pakistan was much lower, not compared to the developing countries in general, but the comparable countries within the region as well. 2016, those numbers have never been updated, and not at least to my knowledge. And I but still believe that the way they have the economy have actually grown. I still believe that the cost is much lower as compared to Bangladesh or Vietnam or Laos or other countries in the region as well. I think those are the numbers which should be available, readily available, and those are the numbers which actually investors want to really take it from the stack and they want to plug it into their project documentation. And those are ones which actually work extremely wonderful in the Excel sheets, which the investors want to see, international investors want to see. I think this is the kind of readiness which needed to be done. And this readiness has to be undertaken by the government as well as the think tanks and those who are actually active in this place, including National Disaster Risk Management Fund as well. And I think we just cannot we cannot kind of leave it up to the uncertainty and the guesswork. I think the system predictability has to be there, which at this point in time is not there. So I think those are the few kind of a big kind of a headline kind of challenges which are there. They are structural within the context of Pakistan, which we need to address. And I think, again, the PV example is very good. I think it happened because it was let it happen, and that's it. There was no facilitation, nothing. It was just, small policy kind of a framework was established and then let it go. I think this is the kind of attitude which is needed. Just let it go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bilal Anwar Saab. Let me come to Arif Saab again. One of the very key developments that happened at the COP was definitely the discussion around the NDCs. And thanks to your effort, Pakistan was one of the countries who very timely submitted the NDCs. But now going forward, we actually have to move beyond the NDCs to the implementation plans and the follow-up. So how do you kind of see the connects, and if there has been any your key takeaways, how we actually need to move forward from this point? So, Arisa, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I congratulate STPI for having this event on debriefing of COP30. As far as climate finance interventions are concerned, I will say that every year when we get ready for the COP, we have high expectations that we will go over there and will get decisions with plenty of money. But we really land on the ground and see that the competitions are there, the ground realities are there. So then we agree on what we get from there. So this COP is also not different from the previous experiences, I must say. For the last 4 years since Glasgow, I'm listening that this year or this COP is the implementation COP, but I have heard anything on implementation in any of the COPs, I must say. But since it's a systematic and slow process and we are to live with it, so under the given circumstances, as Bilal also mentioned, 1.3 trillion is just on the wall, nothing behind it. No technical story is supporting it. Rather, the target of 100 billion is at stake. So in terms of finance, I will say that we got almost nothing or very negligible in terms of this COP, except that tripling of the adaptation finance. We need to look at what is the present adaptation finance, hardly 26 million, I think. Then you also need to think about that what are the global adaptation needs. A couple of weeks back, before the this COP30, the adaptation gap report was published, and it says almost 348 billion dollars of amount is required, rather trillions of dollars of amount is required for these sort of interventions. So there is a huge gap, but whatever is available, let's build on that in the country's context. And for that, what is required is the readiness. We don't have any readiness, although in NDC 3 we tried to quantify some of the sectors, but we need to make the case more clear in terms of sectoral adaptation needs and mitigation needs. Yes, I agree that in 2016, first NDCs, we prepared the marginal abatement cost curve. But this year, Bilal Sahab, we are again going to update these marginal abatement cost curves, having realized that we have not been able to get much in terms of mitigation financing, as well as not been able to leverage the finance through the carbon market. So I think in a couple of months, we will be with the new set of the marginal abatement cost curves. So the priority actions, what I see these days is how we can build up some projects on adaptation and loss and damage. So these are the true key areas. Good thing is that the global indicators, 59 adaptation indicators that have been identified, more or less these are the same indicators that in the preparation of the MRV framework for Pakistan, which GCISC has established, these indicators are in line with it. So it can make a case very clear that how we can go for the adaptation financing. But the real story also is that tripling of the adaptation finance is by 2035. But what is the immediate one? Is it available right now? This is again a question in terms of the international negotiations. So we need to discuss these things in two fronts. The first one, what we can push on the next SBs and next COPs on the agenda items, what we have left in terms of the fossil fuel phase down, in terms of financing. So these are the few, and as well as on technology. These are some of the things we need to get ready at nationally and try to intervene into the LMDCs and G77 circles before going to the next negotiations. At the international level, we need to do that. At the national level, Hamza Saab just mentioned about the climate prosperity plan. Let's see when it comes how much number of projects and the pipeline of bankable projects is there. We can benefit for it, or we can develop some new projects for loss and damage and adaptation finance. With this, I will stop over here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arif Saab, again for highlighting those. Let me quick check if anyone of our colleagues here have any comments on the point around the climate finance roundtable. We also have Dr. Kashif here. Dr. Kashif, if you would like to add anything at this point, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Abed, for inviting me here and allowing me to discuss the key observations which I did in COP30 as an observer. So my key observation is that there's a lot of people talking about climate change, and there are people that negotiating about climate change. So clear divide between the two, the outsider, insider, or blue zone or green zone. So a lot of discussion is happening in blue zone, and people are discussing multiple areas and dimensions about climate change. But my observation is that nothing is passing through the green zone in the negotiations. So I found that lots of discussion is happening outside the blue zone. So what is the purpose for that? So I keep asking, because a lot of meetings and a lot of talks are being held over the years, and people are discussing these things, but specifically what is the purpose for talking like this? Because thousands of people have flown to the Belem and Brazil. So lots of carbon emissions is there. So I was looking for the purpose. So I couldn't found that there is a connection between the blue and green zone. So I think my key observation is that some transformational change in negotiation styles or COP style should be there. So that's the key, my understanding. Otherwise, we can have only a blue zone, or either if there is a green zone, so something should be transmitting or getting messages from that, or that can contribute to the negotiations. So this is my first observations. But of course, the great events happening in Pakistan pavilions, I've witnessed many of them. So it's a great learning. So having said that, in the morning, regarding the questions, in the morning, we discussed three important things. Naveed Kamar Sab mentioned that the homework, capacity, and cooperation. These are the three things which we have to deliver till 31st COP. First one is most important, the homework. The homework, I mean, is data and science. So still there are very gray areas in Pakistan where climate research is needed. Particularly, we have 8 agroecological zones. We don't know what is happening to those people, what is happening to the agriculture there, what is happening to the livelihoods, what people are thinking about that, how they are getting resilient from the climate change. So these are very gray areas. So for example, people in Balochistan, people in extreme areas of Sindh where the droughts are hitting in Thar, or still many gray areas, still our knowledge is not up to date. So science, we need to improve the science, of course, and that's actually translate that how we can going to adapt to climate change impacts. So adaptation, of course, is a diverse field. For me, Madam Secretary also discussed the technology transfer. Of course, technology transfer is very important for agriculture, for industry, for my understanding, for improving livelihoods. Nature-based solutions are the critical one. In SDPI, over the 3 years, we are working on a project where we doing assessment on a nature-based solution. Where in 2014 there is a afforestation program, BTAP we call it. We analyze it, and what we found that around 1.6% per year, the forest cover has been increasing. So it's a huge success in both the protected and the reserve forests. It's account for 80% of the forest in Pakistan particularly in KP. So it reducing 2% of poverty to the adjacent communities. We have did a rigorous data collection, GIS mode sensing and social. So it showcased that the nature-based solutions not only improving the livelihood of the people, the poverty and all this, but also the contributing the mitigation and adaptations. So beside looking to the technology transfer, of course, that is important, particularly the energy sector and the agriculture sectors. But for the people to become resilient, nature-based solutions is very critical. And nature-based solutions is not going to be donor-driven. It should be from the local understanding. And for that, we do not need much money. And that is, we have showcased in 2014, most of the forest activities were, afforestation activities was conducted by the public money and involving the community. So in this way, I think we can meet the objective that we not only the beggars or asking for the money, as Mariam Zainab also told us, that we are not, after the 2025 flood, we are not asking for money, but we are asking for people to help us in terms of solutions. So I think there is number of solutions there. We just need to highlight those things and then bring it to the table so that we can become more adaptable and more resilient.
Thank you so much. Wonderful, Dr. Kashif. We will be joined by Dr. Shazra in just like 3 to 4 minutes. Yeah, but just in the meanwhile, let us take a couple of questions if we do have the... Yes, please, Arfa, go ahead. If we can have the mic to Arfa.
I would like to ask a question from Arif Saab. First of all, you always have done amazing work on the NDCs and it's really inspiring. I wanted to ask this year's NDCs 3, we see that there's a whole breakdown of the financial requirements which we'll be needing. By 2030, approximately $348 billion and 2035, $565 billion. So, sir, of course, that's a lot of money. And building on the conversations that we just had now regarding how climate finance is shrinking and globally it's getting a little gloomy in terms of finance. What pathways can Pakistan take to not exactly achieve that kind of finance, but still be on track to in order to achieve our NDCs and targets and all of those things? So yeah, that's a little bit something that was in my head. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Two things I want to make it clear, that whatever is required is required. I mean, it's the money that you require to meet your NDCs, $565.7 billion by 2035. So whether this money is available from the international support, from the private sector support, or the government indigenous support, this is another question. So when we were developing this NDCs, it was said that it's a huge amount of money and who will be going to provide you that money? So my argument at the time was that we require implementation of NDC, and this is the calculation of what is required. How to require it? We need to build a separate case. In the bilaterals during the COP, we have some good discussions with NDC partnership and many other donors to now develop an NDC implementation and business plan. So how these commitments make into realization. At the country level, we have the green taxonomy, we have the financial budget tagging, we have the planning commission's PSTP, PC1 rules where climate is embedded there. National climate finance strategies also now being rolled out. So these are 3 or 4 interventions that we are doing at the national level. But for the international level, again, we need to make the case more robust and more clear. And that could be, there is general description is that for energy sector, we require so much for universal access to water and sanitation and for resilience. But we need to go a deeper details of all these things. How much is actually required for each intervention. So that is what that the NDC implementation business plan will does. So once it's clear, then we will be moving forward whether to go with the international community. You see the international community, the response, what is there, how we can involve the private sector in whole this debate. My personal opinion is this, that until and unless we make this NDC implementation case more tilted towards the involvement of the private sector, this money is hard to get. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arif Saab. Okay, Ji, Alif Saab, please.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम, थैंक यू सर। आई एम अली जाबिर, आई एम प्रेसिडेंट एनवायरनमेंट जर्नलिस्ट फोरम। मेरा क्वेश्चन जो है सर फहद से और सर आरिफ से। सर आरिफ साहब से ये मेरा क्वेश्चन है कि जो द एनडीसी डॉक्यूमेंट दैट वी सबमिट एवरी टाइम टू द यूएनएफसीसी, दिस इज शुड बी अ नेशनल लेवल एफर्ट एंड यू मस्ट बी engaged in the national level effort to develop that inventory and all that data. So how you ensure that this is inclusive, specifically in terms of gathering data that is related to provinces like Balochistan, the less accessible areas of Sindh, and some hard to reach areas of KP, GB, and even AJK, and in context of the IIOJK, how you manage and ensure that the projections and the targets that you are going to mention regarding particular sectors that one way or the other will be engaging these geographical areas, how you ensure that the document is accurate and is as per the ground level realities. And for Sir Fahad Saeed, I have this question, sir, that when we observe these kind of negotiations, these forums globally like the COP and many other under the UNFCC, there is a sort of technical jargon that is being used deliberately to keep the bureaucracy and to some level the budding intelligentsia of the underdeveloped countries, to keep them entrapped in that jargon and never let them come out of what the niche thing they had to discuss or they had to table during the negotiations. So how to address that? And do you think that it is a constraint for the developing countries, or they are managing it well during the negotiations? Your take on that, sir.
I think we can perhaps start from Fahad Saab.
Okay, I'm not sure that I've understood your question fully when you said that jargon. So, but let me tell you that this process is the of the UNFCCC is the most democratic process of UN, and probably one of the most democratic multilateral processes in the world, where every country has a voice. The decision has to be made with consensus. Compare it with UN Security Council. You have a veto power, so 20 to 25% of the world's population are making the decision for the whole world. They cannot stop a genocide, for example, in Palestine, but that is what the structure of UNF Security Council. So if you compare it with that, this is the most democratic process, but at the same time, the reality are a bit different. I mean, it is embedded into the process that the countries who have less resources or less space to negotiate, they are always the sufferers. If I explain you the dynamics of the COP, so what happens is that developed countries, EU, for example, they are the champions of climate actions to reduce the warming. To do mitigation, to reduce warming 1.5 degrees centigrade. But along with that, there are other groups, such as small island developing states, such as least developed countries. such as ILAC. ILAC are the Latin American countries, who put on the show during the during the closing plenary of COP30. Colombia, Paraguay, and these countries, So they also join with EU when it comes to climate action to 1.5 for mitigation. But when it comes to adaptation, the needs for implementation, for example. So all these three groups which I mentioned, they stand with the economies in transition, emerging economies. And these emerging economies, I named them before, like Saudi Arabia, India, to some extent China. They always push back on any action regarding 1.5 or any action regarding mitigation. So these dynamics are very complex, So it's not like between developing and developed. So this is a very simplification of the process when we say developing versus developed. Developing versus developed always comes in when there is a discussion about means of implementation. Let me give you the case of Pakistan. How 1.5 degrees centigrade is important for a country like Pakistan, who have contributed less than 1%. And if you consider the historical emission, it becomes only 0.3%. So less than 1% is at the current emission level, right? So currently we are almost 1.3 degrees centigrade warmer than the pre-industrial world. And all the challenges or the impacts which were shown in the presentation by Dr. Zainab, the heat waves, so on, the flooding and all that. So Pakistan is witnessing at 1.3 degrees centigrade level of warming. What would happen at 1.5 degrees centigrade? It's certainly going to increase. What would happen if the temperature go beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade? Just imagine, So right now, 1.5 it is said that we haven't achieved 1.5 yet, but it is certainly on the cards that we will go beyond 1.5. Then to what level we have to go? To 1.6, to 1.7 or 2 degrees? So that is still depends on the action the country would take in terms of curbing emissions, So that what I try to explain that these process, it's very complicated. So I haven't mentioned it before, but I have been engaged in this process since 2018. I have attended all the COPs. I have attended a number of IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change sessions, their plenaries. So I could clearly see that we are going toward multilateralism. Sorry for the long answer, but just one more minute. So in the SCO Plus conference in China in September, it was in August and September, 2 days conference, 31st August and 1st of September. President Xi came up with a new governance structure. Probably you have heard of it, And he also said that the current UN Security Council structure is based on the Cold War, the play of after the Cold War, and we need to change it. He was not against the UN. He's not trying to come up with the alternative here. But he said that the UN is at the very core, but we need to change the structure of the UN. And what he said, and my reading was that he wanted to make it similar to what we have in UNFCCC. It will be democratic, but of course there would be forces who would be pulling the strings. For example, Saudi Arabia push back on all the efforts when it comes to phasing out of fossil fuels, because its economy, 90% of its economy depends on fossil fuel. But Pakistan, it's very difficult for Pakistan to go against Saudi Arabia. You know the reason, because they always come up with to bail Pakistan out of their economic crisis. Multiple times they have done it in the past. So just to let you know that when you talk about jargon, so it is not a zero-sum game always, so it's very complicated. There are very sensitivities attached to the position of different countries. I hope I answered your question, if that was your question. Thank you.
Sure.
Obed, just taking the leverage while we are waiting for the state minister who's on her way. She's joining us shortly. So there are multiple questions in Pakistan that are being asked from us, and I'm sure from so many of the representatives sitting here, and just taking this leverage, and because I know all of us are very busy. Just one key question that arises rather at COP also, and there are so many young people who joined this year. They asked a simple question. So developing countries and global south, over the years we have seen that there is a message of solidarity that global south gives, whether that's in the form of G77 plus China, or the African states, their union, or the small island states. So the question is, whenever we are during negotiations, whenever there's a deadlock for a few hours, or when presidency tries to take over, why is it that the global south is not able to push back with in a hegemonic style, or are we not in a position? My question is, I saw China's take on CBAM, pushing them back, calling this inequitable development, and G77 was there. Why can't we do this in terms of finance? If rich countries can impose sanctions on us, why can't, I'm being idealistic here, I know, but just want to know, why can't we give a pushback in the form of, we are not going to be doing trade with you if you do not disperse the finance in next certain period of time. Just, and being an idealist and somebody who has been attending COP since the last 3 years, I'm asking your response on this. Over to you.
No, that's a very good question, and it's a really fruitful discussion. I think this discussion is very important in the previous session, because that is what we need to understand. Let me give you an example of the loss and damage fund. How did we get the loss and damage fund? Because G77 plus China had a position. When you have the common position, then it puts a lot of pressure on the developed world in terms of taking a decision. I mean, developed world, they did not want to take the decision. US was pushing back like anything. So EU was a bit in the middle, but it was US which was pushing back. So when G77 plus China had a position, it puts a lot of pressure. But again, as I explained, that when you particularly, we can discuss it by case to case. So when it comes to CBAM, so CBAM was basically impacting the countries which has a big volume of export to EU. And which countries are those? China, India, Saudi Arabia, to a larger extent because of their exports in the fossil fuel exports. And that is the thing, because that particular measure was impacting, actually it is impacting their economies. It is not impacting the economies of smaller and developing states. It's not impacting the economies of the LDCs to that extent, not the other economies. So what CBAM is saying, that the product you are exporting to the EU, you have to make sure that it is a clean product. In the development of that product, or there should not be a lot of emissions associated with it. But the economies of those countries are heavily dependent on the fossil fuel. Like I gave you an example of India, 70 to 75% of their economy is based on fossil fuel. So again, and they wanted to discuss it because UNFCCC is a multilateral process, So that's why they could not come onto. And when it comes to emissions, to mitigation, when it comes to 1.5, IOCs, the small island developing state, they have a strong position that we have to keep it to 1.5 degrees centigrade. In fact, in the Paris Agreement in 1.5 in 2015, that limit of 1.5 came because of the push of the small island developing states. But these countries, the big economies, they are not in the favor of these 1.5. So there is a rift. So I hope that I answered the question. So it's a very difficult dynamics to steer. When you're in the room, when you always come to know that, okay, the delegates remain at the venue the whole night, So I myself have spent 42 hours without any sleep at the venue, discussing all these things, certainly Arif Saab must have gone through a similar experience. The reason is that nobody's showing the flexibility, and then you have to come up with at the negotiation table. It's like a bargaining. जैसे आप फ्रूट लेते हो कई दफा बार्गेनिंग करते हैं ना. So it is similar to that. So you have to give something, you have to get something, and that's how things move on. So it's not like, I mean, I know for a people sitting outside of the process, it's very frustrating. Why don't they give us the money? So, but because the money doesn't come easy, we ask for the public finance, which means that a person who's doing a job in UK or in Europe or in US, he has to pay that money in the form of taxes, and that money would flow to a developing country. And especially, we have to do the introspection that if they come to know that their money is again laundered and come back to the bank. Just imagine if I'm working in let's say in UK, I pay the tax. The tax goes to a country in the developing world. And then I come to know that, okay, so that money is laundered, come back to my bank again. So, I mean, I would have so that is also the domestic pressures which the countries have. So it's a very complicated process. I hope that I'm able to explain it to some extent, but it is far more complicated than this. Arisa, would you like to add?
आरिफ साहब सॉरी आप इस पे ऐड करें, लेकिन आप मुझे ये भी बता दें, और क्योंकि आप इधर बैठे हैं मैं इसलिए फ़ायदा उठा रही हूँ इससे पहले कि मैडम मिनिस्टर आए, आप इसका भी मुझे रिस्पॉन्स दें और मुझे ये भी बताएं कि जो एनडीसीज हमने बनाए हैं इन द एब्सेंस ऑफ इंटरनेशनल फाइनेंस, हम कितनी प्रोग्रेस एक्सपेक्ट कर सकते हैं उन एनडीसीज पे, ये बताइएगा। और जो डॉक्टर फहद बात कर रहे हैं, कॉप्स पे जाके आपकी गवर्नमेंट्स एंजॉयमेंट्स नहीं करती, इट्स अ वेरी हेक्टिक प्रोसेस, रात देर तक वहाँ नेगोशिएशंस चलते हैं। स्पेशली अभी बेलेम में हम लोगों ने गर्मी झेली, आग झेली, तूफान झेले, एग्जैक्ट वल्नरेबिलिटीज वहाँ हम देख कर आए। इट वॉज एक्सट्रीमली चैलेंजिंग एनवायरनमेंट, प्लस there was no food available all the time, so no transport available all the time, so you had to be at the venue. So I think इसको brief करते ये next debate करेंगे हम कभी। आरिफ गोही साहब, over to you.
थैंक यू वेरी मच। मैं जस्ट ऐड करूंगा फहद साहब के पॉइंट को। ओवर टाइम जो निगोशिएशंस हैं बड़ी टेक्निकल हो गई हैं। द प्राइमरी थिंग इज द होमवर्क दैट यू डू। अब सारा साल तो हम काम करते नहीं हैं, ना हमारी नेशनल वर्किंग ग्रुप्स हैं ऑन डिफरेंट स्ट्रीम्स, अगर वो हों तो हम काम कर लें। सेकेंड थिंग इज कि हमारा होमवर्क जो है वो उनके साथ भी रिलेट नहीं करता जो लाइक माइंडेड डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज हैं और जो G77 और चाइना में हैं। जब हम कॉप में जाते हैं तो उस वक्त ही हम लोगों से मुलाकात करते हैं। अगर हमारी प्रायर अंडरस्टैंडिंग हो इन चीज़ों के ऊपर, प्रायर फ्रेंडशिप हो उन चीज़ों पे, तो देन वी विल बी एबल टू डिलीवर मच। सो दिस इज वन एस्पेक्ट। अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी। सेकंड इज के जो एनडीसीज हैं उनके ऊपर लाजमी बात है कि जब आपके पास एक्सेस टू फाइनेंस नहीं होगी तो प्रोसेस आपका लिंगर डाउन हो जाएगा। अब वो फाइनेंसिस जो मैंने शुरू में अर्ज किया जितनी चाहिए वो तो चाहिए, अब वो इंटरनेशनल कमिटमेंट से आ जाए तो फाबिहा बहुत अच्छा है। अब आपकी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन जो हैं वो ज़रा बेहतर तरीके से हो जाएंगी, फास्ट ट्रैक पे हो जाएंगे। आप कह पाएंगे कि 2035 का पाथ वे वी आर अचीविंग वेल। जैसे अभी हमने कहा कि हमारे पास 2024 तक वी आर गोइंग वेल ऑन एनडीसी, वी आर ऑन द पाथ वे, लेकिन प्रोसेस इज बिट स्लोड बिकॉज द इंटरनेशनल सपोर्ट इज नॉट देयर। So finances जो हैं that provides a key for the implementation of NDCs। आपको या तो नेशनली अपने फाइनेंशियल फ्रेमवर्क को इतना रोबस्ट करना होगा, जैसे मैंने ग्रीन टेक्सोनोमी की एग्जांपल दी, नेशनल क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस स्ट्रेटजी को मैंने कोट किया। आप कोई प्राइवेट सेक्टर के साथ मिलके कोई चाकआउट कर लें अगर वे फॉरवर्ड, तो देन वी विल बी वेल ऑन ट्रैक इन टर्म्स ऑफ एनडीसी जो उसकी टारगेट्स की मीटिंग है। अली का एक और क्वेश्चन था रिगार्डिंग द इंक्लूसिविटी। देखिए, वी हैव लर्न फ्रॉम द पास्ट एक्सपीरियंसेस। जब मुझे याद है व्हेन इन 2016 वी प्रिपेयर्ड आवर फर्स्ट एनडीसी, तो हार्डली देयर आर 4 or 5 पीपल हु डेवलप्ड दैट डॉक्यूमेंट। एनडीसी 2 में हमने इस प्रोसेस को ज़्यादा इंक्लूसिव कर दिया। वी कम अप विद द कमेटीज, अडेप्टेशन कमेटीज, मिटिगेशन कमेटीज, एंड मिटिगेशन कमेटी और अडेप्टेशन कमेटी के वर्किंग ग्रुप्स आ गए। उनके अंदर सेक्टोरल इन्वॉल्वमेंट आ गई, एकेडमिया की इन्वॉल्वमेंट, सिविल सोसाइटी, डेवलपमेंट पार्टनर। दिस ईयर हमने इस प्रोसेस को उससे भी ज्यादा रोबस्ट कर दिया। वी वेंट इनटू द प्रोविंसेस, 2 rounds ऑफ कंसल्टेशंस वी हेल्ड इन द प्रोविंसेस। इवन 1-2 कंसल्टेशंस में तो वैद ने भी शायद मुझे सपोर्ट किया व्हेन वी वर इन केपी और सिंध में। तो अब जो सबसे अच्छी बात इस दफा ये हुई है, और अगर आप पाकिस्तान का NDC 3 का लास्ट चैप्टर पढ़ लें बिफोर द एनेक्स, इट प्रोवाइड्स यू ए रोड मैप कि हाउ टू मॉनिटर द NDC इन फ्यूचर। कि आप बजाय हर दफा एक स्टार्ट लेके जीरो से आप प्रोविंस के पास जाएं और डेटा कलेक्शन की बात करें, व्हाई डोंट यू कम अप विद एन मेजरमेंट रिपोर्टिंग एंड वेरिफिकेशन सिस्टम के आपके पास डेस्कटॉप के ऊपर डाटा अवेलेबल हो ऑन द इंटरवेंशन दैट द प्रोविंसेस हैव डन, और तो उनकी बेसिस के ऊपर आपके पास रेडी रेफरेंस ग्लोबल स्टॉक टेक की तरह आपका नेशनल NDC स्टॉक टेक होता रहेगा। तो इस दफा हमने जो 2 बातें की हैं वो ये हैं कि हम प्रोविंसेस में गए हैं, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान, 2 राउंड्स ऑफ डिस्कशन वहां से हुई हैं। सो इंक्लूसिविटी इज वेरी मच देयर। द सेकंड थिंग इज कि हर सूबे की अब अपनी NDC प्रेपरेशन कमेटी बनी थी इस दफा, जिसको हम NDC इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कमेटी बनाने जा रहे हैं, और उसका मैंडेट ये रख रहे हैं कि आफ्टर एवरी 3 months दीज कमेटीज विल मीट, और ये जो आपकी फेडरल की अडेप्टेशन की और मिटिगेशन की कमेटीज हैं उनके के साथ मिलके दे विल प्रोवाइड ए स्टॉक टेक ऑफ व्हाट वी हैव अचीव्ड सो फार। With this, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And let me welcome Dr. Shazra Mansab, the Minister of State for Climate Change and Environmental Coordination. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. And I think I'll very quickly come to Zainab for summarizing the discussion before your final remarks. I think just before that, Zainab, just to kind of give a quick introduction of what we have been doing since the morning. So we actually had Civil Service Academy representatives, almost 60 of them joining the batch, joining us today in the morning. Unfortunately, they actually had to leave at the end of the last session, and they actually had a really good discussion around the key outcomes we actually had from COP and climate change. And we were also very pleased to have been joined by Sayyid Naveed Qamar Sahab, the member National Assembly and the chairman of Standing Committee on Revenue and Finance. And following that, we actually had 2 roundtable discussions. One was that was generally focused on the overall, how do we actually move forward from the outcomes that we actually have from COP13. We really appreciate all the wonderful efforts and hardships that the Ministry of Climate Change has made. And then we actually had to do a particular specific roundtable discussion. One was on the climate finance, and the second one was on just energy transition. And I'll very quickly request Zainab to very briefly summarize them before we go to Madam for her special remarks. So Zainab, over to you.
Thank you. So just without taking much time, Civil Service Academy 48th STP syndicate and officers were here, ma'am. And then we had a really good discussion, and plus discussion around NFC was also, it was discussed how climate action in NFC and how it needs to be streamlined in context of Pakistan's climate governance and climate action. And they had really pertinent questions that were answered by Sayyid Naveed Qamar Saab. Then we had in the other roundtable, we had representatives from civil society organizations, and including Renewables First, and Bilal Anwar Saab was here, and also Mr. Hamza Haroon from CBF, who discussed climate prosperity plan and the climate finance action, and what Pakistan can, what could be the key takeaways for Pakistan. Now, the overall gist of this entire discussion is now, instead of waiting for COP31, and we also understand the ground realities that are there in context of international development finance and assistance, as we did not receive even crumbs or peanuts that we say when during this year's floods. And flood is not just one vulnerability that Pakistan is facing. There are heat waves, there's water scarcity, there's so many other challenges that we are going through only because we did not create this crisis. But again, if we talk about the climate perception index, Pakistan stands at top 15 ranking, which means we have improved our climate governance and action despite not getting enough international finance, which means Pakistan has prioritized its climate action and made part of its development agenda. But now, as media is prioritizing this debate, as now people are looking up to the government on how do they foresee the next flood season, and how prepared is Pakistan? So with this, I would request you, ma'am, for your kind remarks. And being State Minister, how do you think this discussion should lead as a way forward for us? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And first of all, good afternoon, everybody. And I must start by congratulating SDPI because what you've told me and all the discussions that you've had since morning and all the, it was very inclusive, obviously, and also the civil society was there, parliamentarians. And so I'm sure that you had a very good input. And I wish that I'd been able to be there to hear all the discussions, to see what, because it's the youth, the young leaders who are going to come up with the solutions for all the problems that we have. And like Zainab, you rightly pointed out, Pakistan is obviously one of the most vulnerable countries, and yet the lowest emitters, one of the lowest emitters as well. But we are what we are, and we have to see how to take this forward. You've just heard from the person, Mr. Gohir, who himself worked very hard on NDC3, and I am a witness to all the process that he went through and how inclusive that process also was. So all the provinces and most of the sectors were brought on board before we presented our NDC, and it was a very strong and a powerful NDC that we presented this time. Unfortunately, I could not go to the COP this time myself, and so I have just heard of what was discussed at the COP. COP has, unfortunately, as an institution, it's become very questionable because of the outcomes that we usually, expect or hope or celebrate after every COP. And then in the next year or 2 years, when we don't see what the promises or whatever has been made actually on ground, it becomes disappointing. And the people question now that after spending so much on every COP, what outcomes are there? So, but I think, like Charles Dickens, everybody must have heard, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. But that sentence ends also with, it was the spring of hope and it was the winter of despair. So we have hope. We should not despair, where even though it's very bleak, the situation, but we do not despair, and we continue to hope, and we continue to think that we can do some change, because we don't have any options. We don't have any options but to work in our own capacity towards trying to combat, mitigate, or adaptation measures, resilience measures. We don't have any choice, because this is something that we have to do for our own coming generations. And we will continue to work. Pakistan, we've already said, faces climate effects and is not a great emitter. At COP30, we witnessed how critical global cooperation is to tackling this problem, which we've not only witnessed here at Belem, but also in the previous many COPs. And in one of them, Pakistan was actually at the helm of getting the the loss and damage fund operational. But however, we still haven't seen, even like Zainab said, even crumbs from even that fund. So those facts are there. While there were some positive outcomes, the overall progress highlighted the tensions between political realities and the urgency of the crisis. Global South has taken on a more active role in this, as USA has pulled out of the Paris Agreement, and nobody knows what's going to be their future. However, we as a country must ensure that we are part of this collective effort, and we do not only, yes, we are a developing country, and yes, the developed countries have a duty to support developing countries in whatever way they can. However, apart from that, Pakistan wants to be part of the solution as well. Not just say that we need these international support, but we are going to be part of the solution as well. The Mutirao concept discussed at COP30 emphasizes collective action. So it is a reminder that whenever one's house is on fire, everybody needs to collectively work. And this house that we live in, our collective house, the globe, the earth, and all its ecosystem, that is our survival. That is how we can survive. So Pakistan has already demonstrated leadership from the front. We've led from the front. The Climate Prosperity Plan has been launched, which is a very important step. And this plan reframes climate action as an opportunity for economic transformation. So not just for climate transformation, but for economic transformation as well. So that sustainable growth is integrated with resilience to climate shocks. It's a blueprint that highlights green growth, adaptation, systemic resilience, ensuring that our country doesn't just survive climate change, but thrives on green opportunity. So this is a huge opportunity that we have. And so we can safely say that there is the spring of hope. Alongside this, Pakistan is increasingly focusing on provincial climate action. So our provinces are working on practical solutions to local climate challenges, flood resilience projects in Sindh, tackling water scarcity in Balochistan, and other provinces as well. So this decentralized approach ensures that every region has the tools to support and tackle its unique climate challenges. Moving forward, we must align our national climate policies with international commitment. This means focusing on green finance, ensuring that the investments needed for climate action are available at scale, and we also need to strengthen our adaptation efforts, particularly for vulnerable communities. There are numerous opportunities to turn this crisis into a driver of transformation. Rooftop solar installations are already growing, and it's we can say with pride to the world, wherever at the international fora we go, they are extremely impressed with the way the rooftop revolution has happened in Pakistan. And Pakistan's vast renewable energy potential, solar and wind especially, must be fully harnessed. Carbon markets and carbon finance must be operationalized, and that is something that the ministry is working on. The Global South must demand fair and equitable participation in these mechanisms to ensure that we are not left behind. And in conclusion, I will just say that the climate crisis requires, again, urgent collective effort, and this should be a whole of nation approach. Everybody needs to be made aware of what little or more they can do. Not just come up with projects, not just say that okay, we are working in some institution or anything. Even people, children, students, housewives, everybody can do something. And once the whole of the nation decides that they are going to take climate action seriously, you will see a transformation in Pakistan as far as climate and all its pollution and everything else is concerned. So thank you very much once again.
And yes, thank you so much, Madam, for your remarks. And very rightly, we all need to collectively move forward along these rays of hopes that you mentioned. So thank you so much for the recommendations you have mentioned, both for climate finance and the just transition. And with this, let me request Dr. Kashif for formally closing the session with his vote of thanks. So yeah, Dr. Kashif, over to you.
Thank you, Obed. Thank you, Madam, for your presence. Or highlighting key issues, particularly because this session is after post COP30, so a lot of discussion was happened in the early morning. Naveed Kamar has integrated this program, so we have the civil servant presence here, and they ask many critical questions about climate change and how the governance related issues. So that's very insightful discussions we have in the morning. And of course, after we We discussed the key outcomes from the COP30 and the way forward, particularly how Pakistan can move toward implementing the decisions and the areas where the COP30 has succeeded, and also some gaps in that, so how Pakistan can move forward. So, and also your deliberations on COP30 and also the way forward. So your discussion is quite useful and insightful for us to move forward, particularly for SDPI research team. So next, I'd just like to thank Dr. Fahad and Arif Guhi for their presence. And they have provided very valuable insight related to climate finance and other issues. So we are very grateful for eminent researchers and scientists. And last, I'd like to thank you, the Energy Unit and SDPA staff for arranging this seminar. So, and also the hotel management for providing this wonderful arrangement. So with this, I just like to conclude the seminar. So your presence very grateful, and we are grateful for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Please join us for lunch. Thank you. Upstairs. TPI team, if you can facilitate and escort the guests upstairs, please. Thank you.